This is such a cool story. Coming up, one of rock's most underrated singers tells us a story. It's just unbelievable. So his guitarist was vamping on a song in the middle of a live concert. So the singer just rattled off a bunch of gibberish into the microphone, and out came one of the greatest classic rock songs ever created on the spot. After they got through the show, they knew that they had something special, but they were worried that they'd forgotten the words and how it all went. They're really grateful to know that a kid had bootlegged it. One of the coolest rock and roll stories ever is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever put tape over those little tabs or slots on the cassette tapes so that you can record on it over and over again, save some money, you're going to enjoy this channel. Any 80s kid knows that. Make sure that you subscribe below. Click the bell so you always get notified about our upcoming interviews and videos. Also, we have a Professor of Rock live show coming up with a Red Rocker himself, Sammy Hagar. Live at Park City on October 29th, an intimate evening of stories and songs, including his solo career, Van Halen, Montrose, and The Circle. It's going to be amazing. The link is below. So I'm excited to bring you another episode from our series, Revelations. This is where featured artists reveal rare stories about the biggest songs, along with fascinating insight about their careers that you won't find anywhere else. Now, in this installment of Revelations, we sit down with the original lead singer and co-founder of the Guess Who, Mr. Burton Cummings, on an unbelievable story of the 1970 #1 smash, American Woman, one of classic rock's greatest.
American woman. Mama, let me be.
Before Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman and the Guess Who charted at the top of the charts in 1970, the band had established themselves with several well-received albums, including the more mature pop rock sound, some soul and jazz influences. Wheatfield Soul, that was released in early 1969. It achieved success in both their native Canada and the U.S. Their classic hit, These Eyes, that reached the top 10 in the U.S., and it became a gold record with sales exceeding 1 million copies. Great song.
These eyes watched you.
And then came the follow-up album titled Canned Wheat. That one dropped toward the end of 1969, and it featured the double-sided hit single Laughing and Undone. Now, for their next album, the band brought in more of a hard rock influence. American Woman, that was released in January of 1970, and it became a massive worldwide hit. It became their first album at the top of the Canadian albums chart, as well as the first to reach the top 10 here in the U.S.
American woman, gonna mess your mind. American woman.
With the memorable title track that reached #1 in both countries. Also became a substantial hit in the UK and spread the word of the Guess Who there. Actually, the Guess Who became the first Canadian band to achieve a chart-topping single in the United States during the Billboard Hot 100 era. Before the Hot 100, there was the Canadian doo-wop group The Crew Cuts, who had a #1 single in 1954.
Life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise up above.
But that was before the Hot 100 was instituted and recognized as the industry standard. Anyway, first Canadian band to do that in the Hot 100. Outside of its #1 title track, the American Woman album had several classic songs. It had the top 10 song No Time, which is actually my favorite Guess Who song of all time.
On my way to better things.
Also, No Sugar Tonight, New Mother Nature.
Tonight in my coffee. No sugar tonight in my tea. No sugar.
Up next, original lead singer Burton Cummings tells the amazing story of how American Woman pretty much fell out of the sky and its influence on our culture, as well as the single's counterpart, No Sugar Tonight. Also, the controversy that's not even real. It's not political. You'll find out next. Now, as we go into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, that helps to keep the music alive. The brand of glasses I jam every day. If you need a pair of glasses or even sunglasses, Zenni is the only choice, I'm telling you. You create your look, you put in your prescription, and you pay less than a vinyl record for it. You'll really be amazed. Check it out today at Zenni.com. Here's Burton Cummings with the story of American Woman.
American woman, stay away from me.
mean, what can you say about American Woman that hasn't been said, but we'll talk about it anyway. I love the story about how you guys wrote it. That's one of the greatest rock and roll stories of how a song came together. The Curling Rink show, Broom and Stone.
The Broom
right?
and Stone.
Tell me that story. I love
Broom
it.
and Stone Curling Rink, Brampton, Ontario. We were doing 2 shows, so I guess we weren't that big yet because we were still doing 2 shows a night.
You're out in the parking lot.
It was
getting Gene
between
Vincent.
shows,
Yeah.
and I'm like, where do you do? You've done research, boy, I'll tell you. This guy was always a collector looking for the rare records.
Yeah.
And this guy knew that, I guess from the rumors and interviews I had done, and he had a bunch of Gene Vincent singles, some on 78, some on 45, and I wanted to get these. And I'm bargaining with this guy. I'm trying to cut some kind of a deal with him outside, and I hear the guys start up the second show. They're on stage already, and I say to this guy, look, I'm sorry, man, but I'm supposed to be up there on stage. I run in, and the guys had started this vamp. They had the riff going, and I just started singing whatever came into my head. You know,
Yeah.
all that stuff about war machines and ghetto scenes and colored lights can hypnotize, just making it up. There was a kid there bootlegging the show on a cassette machine,
It
which
just
was
barely
a
come out.
fairly new invention at the time,
Yeah.
a portable cassette machine. It was still pretty big. The guy had it on his shoulder. It was still pretty big to drag to a concert, but somehow we got a hold of the cassette later, listened to it. We thought that was a pretty good hook. They liked the fact that I was singing American Woman and blah, 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 and we ended up recording it. I might have changed a few lyrics later, but basically that's the way it came out on
Well, it
stage.
sounds very stream of conscience.
It
really
was. It was a
does.
stream of consciousness, one
Yeah.
of those Bob Dylan moments where it just comes out of you and you don't really know where. Neil Young talks about that all the time.
Yeah.
When he's writing a song, it's almost like it's coming through him from somewhere else. That's what happened with American Woman.
Come hanging around my door. Don't wanna see your face no more.
I'm always so fascinated hearing Peterson and Cale explaining what the lyrics are about. You know?
Yeah, I know.
These guys, these old guys, man, I don't know. You know, it was never
About
a
the
song.
draft.
It was never a song until I came out with the lyrics. Even and Randy will deny this, and I don't care if he denies it, but I know the truth. The guitar riff, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, those are piano riffs that I taught him on guitar. That's not a guitar riff, da-da-da-da. If you listen to New Mother Nature on the American Woman album, you'll hear that piano riff in there. Ba-dum-dum, da-da-da-dum, ba-dum-ba-dum, da-da-da-dum.
Wow.
It's right there. I mean, you don't even have to hunt for it. It's right there.
Yeah.
But Randy forgets these things. You know, he talks about how he wrote American Woman. He didn't even write all the guitar lines, for God's sake.
Well, the sultry beginning idea that's on the long version on the
Oh,
album.
the little blues thing.
Yeah,
I think that might have been Randy's idea, but
So I was
certainly.
just going to ask because I love that vocal. I love how
the
that starts.
American Woman,
Yeah.
gonna miss you, man. And then we used it as a bookend at the very end of the album too.
American woman, she gonna mess your mind.
And Richardson thought that was a cool way to kick the album off.
So this whole thing about Vietnam and anti-war and all that kind of stuff, was that
Nonsense.
nonsense? You never really thought?
You know what it was? We had been touring the States on the strength of These Eyes and Laughing, and I noticed that the American girls grew up faster, or seemed to visually grow up faster. They wore more makeup at an earlier age. They wore sexier clothes at an earlier age. Canada was a little more colloquial, is that the right word? Canada was just a little less streamlined, is what I'm saying. And so we had toured the States and saw all these 14 and 15-year-old girls that looked 20 already. And then we came back to Canada and the girls looked more innocent and fresher. And what came out of my mouth was American Woman, stay away from me. And what I was actually thinking was Canadian Woman, I prefer you. That was my mindset. Not to hell with the Statue of Liberty and America is the great Satan. And none of that. It was not political at all.
Right.
But, you ask Jim Cale and he'll say, well, yes, yes, the American woman was actually the Statue of Liberty. Yeah, thanks, Jim. Jim, would you like to explain your lyrics for These Eyes now?
Yeah.
Honest to God, it
Well, the
was
end of the
never,
song-
ever meant to be political. But, why did I say war machines and ghetto scenes? Because it rhymed. Because it rhymed. And Vietnam in 1970 was at a particularly bad point of escalation.
Mm-hmm.
So the American people read all that into it. Plus the soldiers, they loved that.
Oh, yeah.
They loved that. The guys that were in the trenches in Vietnam and stuff, it was a big song to them. So I think it was a very, how can I put this? A happy accident, really. A very happy Cinderella kind of a thing that happened. I wasn't angry. I love the States. All the music that influenced me as a kid came from the States. Living in the shadow of the States, I grew up in Winnipeg, 60 miles north of the border. Had I been born 60 miles south, I would have been an American in North Dakota. But it became political because of the public,
The perception,
the
maybe.
public perception, I guess, and what they read into it themselves, That's
when
what
you're
made
invited
it political.
to the White House because the Nixon's daughter was a huge fan, and they asked you not to play it.
No, you know what? They never asked us not to play it. We should have played it. Our manager thought that would work for us.
See, this was
Well, our
great.
manager thought it would be great to play the White House too, and we just got crucified for that in Rolling Stone. The Nixons weren't all that well liked at the time, Playing
good.
the White House was a big mistake, and
Yeah.
I wish we had never done it because we got absolutely raked over the coals in Rolling Stone, and Jan Wenner never liked us anyway, so to hell with them,
Exactly. When it hit number one, I always loved the story about how you guys were hugging and jumping on the bed.
We broke the bed.
Yeah, tell me about
Milwaukee. Well, in those days, Wednesdays were the magic day. That was
Yeah.
the day the Billboard chart numbers for the following week came out, and we got a call. Well, when it went to top 10, we got excited, and then it went to number 6, and then it went to number 3, and we're wondering, is it possible? Is it possible?
I love
And
it.
sure enough, it went to number 1, and we got the call. We were in Milwaukee in some cheesy motel, and Randy got the call, I guess. He called us into his room, and the 4 of us got on the bed and jumped up and down, hugging like this in a circle, and we broke the bed. I mean, we couldn't believe it. I think I was like 21 I was 21, I guess,
Wow.
to have a number 1. And not only was it number 1, but it was both sides were listed, No Sugar Tonight,
Yep.
and it stayed there for 3 weeks. And whenever we'd go back to Winnipeg for that 3 weeks, I made sure I had a copy of Billboard under my arm. I'd go to the local pool hall and I'd show my school friends, hey, look, man, look what's number 1 in here. It was a big deal. It was a huge deal.
Well, that was one of the biggest songs of that year, too. I think it was the 3rd or 2nd biggest song of 70. But also, the ending of it was what I love so much, too, because the beginning, the longer version, but the ending when, what you were saying, I'm going to leave you. It was
Go!
very,
Gotta get away, gotta get away now. Go, go, go.
Yeah.
Still do that word for word on stage. And I see people
Goodbye,
mouthing
American woman.
it word for word with me. We try and recreate the records just like they were.
Gotta get away now. Go, go, go.
I always wondered if there was a cuss word at the end.
No.
I didn't.
Goodbye, American Chick.
Yep. Some people
People
say.
said it was
I
Goodbye,
think-
American but no,
Yeah.
it's Goodbye, American Chick, which these days is probably more.
I know.
Well, that's probably
Offensive.
worse than to say chick nowadays. You'd get in more
I
trouble.
know. Like every couple years, there's a new cover, there's a new something in the movie. I mean, you think Butthole Surfers have a version of it? Nike, Tommy Hilfiger.
Mhm.
But American Beauty, like you said earlier, that was really cool. Well, Lenny Kravitz, of course, covered it, and he didn't do the solo because he couldn't get the tone. It is what he always said.
I liked, you know, it took me a few listens to get used to his version, but
slower
to be honest, I liked the vocals, the harmony vocals that he used. And it was neat doing that together.
You performed Much Music
On Much
Awards.
Music, we did that together on a New Year's thing. And I'll tell you what was great is Millennium Night. I think it was 1999, New Year's Eve. And Lenny, I guess by that time he had American Woman, because the irony for Lenny is he writes all his own songs. Biggest hit of his career was American Woman.
Yep.
And he was doing a big show, and when it got time to do American Woman, he called out a special guest, and it was Prince. And American Woman, for whatever reason, was a hit all over again for Lenny Kravitz in a different era of history. Those lyrics still made sense. I'm very proud of that. And those are my words. And I'm very proud of that, because to have it be relevant 40 years later, but not to be a love song,
Oh yeah.
then that makes it a little special.
Rare. That's
a little
rare. It doesn't
special,
happen
yeah.
very often. Well, No Sugar Tonight. Tell me about how that song came together.
No Sugar? That's Randy's tune.
No sugar tonight in my coffee. No sugar tonight in my tea.
See, we had those two songs together.
It's the new Mother Nature taking over.
And then when Jack decided to cut New Mother Nature out of it and just put No Sugar as the flip side,
Lonely feeling.
kind of pissed me off, but we were having so much success, I wasn't going to be petty about it. But I got my retribution years later when Friends of Distinction recorded New Mother Nature without No Sugar Tonight.
Mother Nature taking over.
And it was a beautiful R&B version, and I think Randy was a bit jealous of that.
Cold because the sky is falling and I'm getting pretty near the end.
I stopped being petty a long time ago, but it really bothered me at the time. No, because those two songs were meant to be married forever, you know. We still do it that way on stage. As a matter of fact, that's what we open our show with, is No Sugar and New Mother. Just the way it is, the 6-minute version on the album. No Sugar and New Mother were too long for the flip side. It was about 6 minutes. So, and Jack always, and to Jack's credit, it was a very commercial song, No Sugar.
Silence of her mind. Quiet movement.
Whereas New Mother Nature is more of a drug song.
Yes, and I believe inside the things I say. Find a corner.
And I think back then that was still frowned on a little bit. You know, I was hanging out with hippies, man. And the other three guys were old guys already. Randy was having kids and
very straight
and they were all married and old guys. And I was running around with hippies that were doing acid, you know. I don't know how the hell we stayed together as long as we did. To be honest, I honestly don't know.
The way you approach that chorus, I just always love your vocal on that. No Sugar Tonight and the da 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 da.
No sugar to run with me. Da, 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 da.
It's very commercial. To Jack's credit, that's probably the reason it ended up being a double-sided single, because the two songs together, that wouldn't have happened. They were too long. No Sugar, New Mother. As I said, I got my comeuppance when our friends of Distinction, and we actually became friends because we were all on RCA. We did some shows together with them as the opening act. I don't know what kind of promoter would want the Friends of Distinction opening for the Guess Who. That was kind of weird, but we got to be friends. And I knew Floyd very well, and I was thrilled when they did New Mother Nature.
As the albums and songs off of American Woman became a success in the early months of 1970, Randy Bachman recorded an all-instrumental solo album titled Acts with Guess Who drummer Gary Peterson. Soon after that, the Guess Who began recording a follow-up to American Woman, finishing, I think it was 7 tracks. Actually, the tracks were withheld and not released until 1976 under the name The Way They Were. And then guitarist Randy Bachman took a break from touring with the Guess Who because of a severe illness. So American guitarist Bobby Sabellico, he stepped in temporarily. Bachman came into the fold again, played a final show with the band, and then he quit in May of 1970. That happened pretty fast. He would later, of course, form classic rock band Bachman Turner Overdrive, BTO, but that's another story for another day when we will get there. I'll bet this song resonated with you at one point or another. Tell us your story below. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe below right now so that you're part of this music community. Check out our videos on Patreon, our latest merch below. Help us keep the music alive. That's always the idea here. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.